Going back on our conversation, we talked about like how the Republican Party, they do a lot of things that a lot of fake news and a lot of things like that. But I felt like on the Democratic side, there's a lot of extrapolating information to also create fear as
Yeah,
well.
I
Uh,
could definitely see that.
so
Yeah,
like things like immigration, where I've seen a lot of that, where there's like there'd be anything that was said would be extrapolated into a, oh, like the Republicans would
yeah,
say something like, oh, I don't agree with illegal immigration, we need to fix it, and then that leads out to, oh, they don't believe in immigration, they don't like immigrants, they don't
yeah,
like me,
yeah.
like, and
I
I'm an
definitely
American
there.
citizen born here,
Yeah.
and I had
Right.
people being like, oh, Trump's gonna kick you out because he doesn't like immigration.
That happened
And
to
it
a lot of
just,
Vietnamese people voters. That seems why they swayed that way too as well, though. And it's like
Yeah.
that also that had a huge impact to the Hispanic population. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'll tell you, my mom is one of those who she's really far left and she really is in her blue bubble and doesn't she she deletes any Facebook friends that don't have similar viewpoints in her. And so she occasionally she'll post something or say something and I'll basically have to fact check her. Like I'll have to say, "Look, be careful, how you're saying this because that is not exactly what was said. That's not exactly how this was done. It is an extrapolation like you said, that is saying that it's worse than it really is, and so we have to definitely be mindful of that because if we do that we're going to be seen as just as bad as the other side, right? And so it's definitely scary to see that on my side of the line too.
mhm.
yeah, and that's the reason why a lot of also talking to a lot of Trump supporters as well, because like they see that as well, but also obviously they in their end they're not doing any better, right? And it's kind of sad because an average person sometimes cannot tell the difference what if they're doing that or not.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so and it's kind of like, how do you even try to minimize that? How do you even like, you know what I mean? How do you minimize? How do you
I
can't.
mean, I think part of it was like things that, Facebook and Twitter are doing is to kind of monitor what's spread openly across social media. And if it is clearly fake news, then it needs to be stopped. I mean, it doesn't need to be shared publicly. I mean, these social media platforms, I hate to say it censorship because coming from a lot like working for a library for quite a few years, I'm all about, banned books and a lack of censorship. But at some point you have to not allow false statements to be portrayed as
Gotcha.
But
um
is it is it censorship that we need, or is it just more information? Because that censorship means like we're not gonna let it be seen, which
Yeah.
right.
is is a it's a negative on our freedom of speech, right? It's really it's
Yeah.
really against that.
Well, I mean, with social media, you've kind of signed your life away, right? So I mean, I think essentially, like, freedom of speech doesn't apply to what Facebook allows. Like,
No, that's different though, because
yeah,
you're going through
You're going
public
through a company, I get it,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
still like if you if you're not allowing people to speak their mind on things, it's
yeah.
it's a restriction of
I
your
think
rights.
there's a difference, like I said, like I said before, but about stating something as an opinion versus a fact, and I think that's really where that moderation or censorship, right, needs to come in. It is that if someone, for example, like if someone shares a news article from somewhere like Breitbart, right, and it's clearly false information, that should not be allowed to be shared on social media, like or
But
it should be
why is that like something that
flagged.
shouldn't be?
Well, and I mean, I think it's the same for Democrats too. Like, if it's
Yeah.
something false, I don't think you should be allowed to use a public sharing platform to spread this false information. And
But
You
that
gotta
it's like a slippery slope, right? Because you could get to a point where like someone's putting something up as a joke or like a
sarcasm,
satire or something,
satire,
and it's
yeah.
like
well,
obviously
and
Like
wrong. But
I think
then
we've seen that, right? I think we've seen that. I mean, going back pre-social media, right? We see things like
the Onion, or
be
SNL.
allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
mhm.
SNL is a good example, right? We see things that are parodies that are allowed, that are
But
totally fine.
that gets flagged though. Actually, believe it or not, I actually put the Onion article about some
Yeah, I
about
mean, the Onion's a good example, right? Like,
and I got flagged, and then it's
it
kind of
needs
like
to be stated very clearly. I mean, and if it
Right,
is,
but if you get to that point, like you're going to get to a point where, oh, we're gonna flag these or we're gonna censor them, and then like some of them, like how do you know where the line is,
yeah,
and
like
where do you
who's right?
stop
Like
the line?
who defines what's right and wrong in
Yeah,
a
you're
sense,
gonna
right?
let Facebook decide what the line is
Yeah,
on that, and
yeah, I mean,
it's kind of tough though, like, because especially
I,
like,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that, obviously there's been a lot of talk about Facebook in the last couple of years, right?
yeah.
And, our US senators, interviewing Zuckerberg, and, they clearly don't even know what the internet is. And interesting. But it's just, I think that at some point there do need to be like laws and regulation, right? Do I think that it's Facebook in particular's job? No.
No,
I think that there should be some laws and regulation about false information and spreading information. Yes, like I do think that that needs to be. I mean, you can say what you want, but can you share it publicly? Like, it's kind of similar to, can you scream fire in a theater? No, no, you can't, because that endangers people in different ways. And so it's very, it's a little bit different, because I feel like you just have to, it's kind of this almost paternalism that we kind of have to do in order to make sure that everybody is safe. And I think, I think Facebook sometimes comes across as that kind of, screaming fire in a crowded theater. And
well,
so
so I mean, to be
yeah,
honest though, I feel like so it goes two-way street in that sense, right? Okay, I feel like yes, I think Congress and there should be law to catch up to technology piece of that, where
yeah,
there should be laws to help regulate those big ass companies because they're getting too big. But then now we're saying that government is getting too big now in a sense, right? So it's
right.
kind of like where is the fine line behind that in a sense, right? Because obviously certain parties don't want a big government, certain parties want a big government, and it's kind of like
Right.
TikTok
Well,
thing, like
yeah, and I mean, it's very clear that like we can't keep up with technology as fast as it's changing, right? Like our laws
correct.
can't. They just can't. So I think it's definitely interesting how that's going to evolve, but I think there's kind of an ethical and a legal line, right? And so there's like, maybe what's happening on Facebook might not be ethical, but is it illegal? No, that kind of thing. So it's like you have to decipher at some point, it's kind of that box of, ethical and legal and not ethical, not legal, and figuring out which box your information
Yeah.
falls into. And I mean, I think that we're going to have to be held to a higher standard